Hey, everyone. Happy Friday afternoon. My name is Aliki Moncrief. I'm the Executive Director of Florida Conservation Voters, and I could not be more excited than I am right now to be here with two of people who I admire to the moon and back. Rich Templin, who is the Director of Politics and Public Policy with the Florida AFL-CIO, and our very own Maria Revelles, who is the Chispa Program Director. I'm excited to be here because we're talking about a really important issue. We're talking about democracy and its role in making sure that we have healthy communities, making sure that we protect our environment. With democracy, that's the way that people can stand up and hold their lawmakers accountable, and to not only protect our living planet, but make sure that we have healthy communities to live and to raise our children. So without further ado, I'd love to hand over the mic, as they say, to Rich and then Maria to kind of introduce themselves. And then we will dive in and have a conversation about democracy in Florida today. So Rich, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
My name is Dr. Rich Templin. I am with the Florida AFL-CIO. I have been doing this work for about 2 decades. Have been in and around the Capitol for most of that time. It's a lifetime's work, this movement. Here in Florida, we do play defense a lot in the Capitol process, but it's incredibly long hours and missing holidays and such, but from time to time I drive past something, or I think of something that the legislature would have done that would have hurt people and or the environment, that they didn't get to do, partly because I was there with other people pushing back, and that makes it all worth it.
Awesome. I can tell it's Friday. It's been a long week, and I know it's been probably a long year already with committee meetings. Maria, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Maria Revelles, and I am the Chispa Florida Director. And Chispa is a program of community organizing and activism within the Latinx community and Black and Brown communities for Florida conservation voters. Like Rich, I have been an organizer my whole life, and a long part, almost 30 years of it, was as a labor organizer in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean, and then 15 years with 1199 in New York. And I couldn't resonate more what Rich was saying, that so many times we pass through even picket lines and different opportunities, and you say, this people is making a difference. They are standing on the rights, and so lucky that the world is a better place, because collectively we have the opportunity to raise our voice in action. So here we are to having this very, very important conversation from my point of view, absolutely, especially so tied up to the gains and of rights for especially marginalized communities, the women, the voice that so many times are bypassed in the democracy process. So very happy to have this conversation with you guys this morning.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I know, Rich is, what did they say? What's the expression? Pounding the pavement down at the Capitol. And so one of the things I would love to learn a little bit more about, Rich, since you're, not only have you been doing this for 20 years, but you're in it right now, in the thick of it, in the halls of our democracy, so to speak. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how is it different with doing this work in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we're really seeing this interesting dynamic play out. I think we all wanted the governor over the last year and the mechanisms of Florida government to take the COVID pandemic seriously when they didn't. We opened early. We didn't follow CDC guidelines. The situation in Florida could have been much different. Still don't have a mask mandate. So I say this with, a little bit of hesitation because when the legislative season was about to start, that's when they seemed to take the pandemic seriously. And so both the House and Senate instituted protocols which amounted to a lockdown, insulating our lawmakers from the public. Now, it's interesting to note, Florida's Constitution says, well, we've changed it recently, but Florida's Constitution says that at least every other year, there must be a legislative session that begins on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in March. But it doesn't say that they have to stay here. The legislature could have easily come in March, gavelled in, recessed out, and let's let the vaccine take its, let's let the vaccine take its course. Let's get some immunity going. And then they could come back as long as they passed a budget before July 1st. Mm-hmm. They could have done that, but they didn't. They kept the calendar exactly the same, but they shut the people out. The Florida Senate is closed. It's absolutely closed. You cannot get into the building in any way, shape, or form. If you want to address a Senate committee, you have to go, I think it's about 7-8 blocks away to the Civic Center and testify remotely. Mm-hmm. Well, that technology has broken down repeatedly. So the senators are literally advancing legislation when they can't hear the other side, can't see the other side, and we sometimes can't hear them to know what their deliberations are. The House is a little different. They set up the 3 biggest committee rooms for social distancing. You have to jump on the computer as soon as a bill is noticed and register to participate in that meeting. You then have to show ID at the entrance to the Capitol, and they have a list. You then have to go up to the 4th floor, show ID again, and they will give you a card, actually, that looks like this, and it's color-coded, and it changes every day. And then you have to take this card and present it to get into the committee room. Now, while this is all going on, we have seen an unprecedented amount of activity. Incredibly controversial bills that have been introduced year after year after year and failed to pass because they were so controversial. They have all been teed up. We have spent the last 5 weeks hearing some of the most controversial issues that exist in Florida today, and most of them have already passed all their committees. So as soon as the Senate gets here a week from now, they'll be able to start passage of bills with almost no public input, almost no, and the thing is, the most infuriating part of this is that each night when I'm coming from a late committee meeting, my office is right downtown, not far from Florida Conservation Voters, about a block away. And so I have to walk by all the watering holes and association buildings. And every night there's a fundraiser outside with drinking, no masks, hugging. I have been invited out to dinner at least a dozen times over the last few weeks. So they've locked down the Capitol in the interest of COVID. But as soon as the legislative day is over, there's no COVID.
Wow. Well, so they've closed the Capitol, but it's not closed to everyone. Is what I'm hearing you say is that folks who have high-powered hired guns, those corporations are able to get time with lawmakers right now.
I think that. I mean, the Senate is just really locked down tight. And don't think for a second that I haven't gotten into the Capitol building and tried to find one of the hallways into the Senate that doesn't have a guard at it. Because I've been trying to get in the building just because I don't follow rules very well, and I just wanted to see if I could do it. Where the access comes into play is that it's these parties, it's these dinners, it's these let's meet for drinks. The big guys have that access. The medium to smaller people interests do not.
Right.
And the public certainly does not. I mean, keep in mind, nothing stopped people from coming to Tallahassee during this process in the past. Tallahassee is geographically remote.
Right.
I think it makes it psychologically remote. But people did come. I mean, we used to, last session, we brought almost 500 union members throughout the 9 weeks. So we had 40 or 50 people here every week. We can't do that now because of COVID. So it's really irresponsible that the legislature is just pushing forward when there's numerous ways that they could hold off so that they could open the process and let people be involved. We anticipated that they would have some type of digital tools that they were developing so that people could participate in the process from the comfort of their homes, the safety of their homes. No, none of that came out. And as a matter of fact, we found out just about 3 hours ago that the incredibly restrictive rules in the Senate are now going to be adopted for the entirety of session. Up till now, it was just for the interim committee week process. The Senate president sent out an announcement saying that's how it's going to be from now on. Wow.
That's really chilling. I mean, I know you're down there, Jonathan Weber and Lindsay Cross on our team. We're doing our best, right, to be at the Capitol, speak out in opposition to some of the bad legislation that you've been that you were saying has been sort of dug up from. It's almost like zombie legislation from past years that we managed to fight is sort of making an appearance this year. Doing all that to make sure that, legislators know we're not going to stand for it. We're doing our best to make sure that the public understands what's happening on these issues. And I guess I want to pivot a little bit because obviously you and Maria, you come from an incredible labor background. And I think sometimes folks probably wonder, where is labor when it comes to protecting the environment? How are these two spaces and communities intertwined? In fact, we have a question we've got some love for the labor movement in the comments. But Maria, can you talk a little bit about sort of the intersectionality here between labor and environmental issues?
I think labor has been one of the more progressive institutions in terms of the environment, and it has taken them a while. And first of all, let's start by saying one of the most democratic institutions in America are our unions, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the places where truly, and I have had that experience in my past, the janitor was the president of a bargaining unit that included lawyers. So, this is the kind of bodies that we are talking about, right? That's the union, right? The union really is a government that represents, or aims to be a government body that represents all of the membership. And I think that labor has been pivotal because of their unique position within their communities to not only be on the forefront of, we need to protect our communities, we need to protect the communities that our members live, but also think about when we are talking that we want to get rid of fossil fuels, we want to turn this into green jobs. Turn this, unions have the training and education funds that put money into make sure that these, bodies of workers that are going to be displaced, and not only because economy is transitioning to green, that will be the least of our problems. It's really many times is that, manufacturing is going to other countries and things like that. So unions take this money and this training and education fund and re-educate the workforce, into this next generation of funds. So the union has been not only a fighter, but also very important, a catalyst for what is next in how are we going to make our life in America sustainable, green, and decent. And I don't think that is going to go away anytime soon. The opposite. I think the AFL-CIO has actually done interesting studies and put interesting articles regarding transition to green jobs, re-educating our membership. And I think the more that this kind of exchange happens, the climate justice, world and the environmental justice world, decides to create this bridge, with our labor, which is the heart of the work in America, I think the better this synergy is going to become.
Yeah. I love the point that you make about, the labor movement and labor unions also being a democratic institution. And because when I think about democracy, I think about, everyone, when decisions are being made that affect people's lives, that those people have a voice, they have a say in who gets to represent them in making those decisions, and that they can also then hold those folks accountable to the decisions that are made. So, I mean, it's clearly, unfortunately, from what you're reporting, Rich, like, not only is that not happening at the legislature right now, but they are actively undermining. They are undermining the ability of people to have a voice in the process. So one of the things I know that happened last year, and it feels like it's a constant source of conversation, is the citizens initiative processes. Is that on the radar this year, Rich? I mean, that's obviously another mechanism. You can certainly share with folks who are watching, like, what that is. But is that what's going on on that front? Oh, wait, you're muted. Hold on. You got to unmute yourself.
That's okay. Sorry. I had gotten a question, and so I was trying to type out an answer, and it was making a clacking sound, so I had gone on mute. I wanted to go back to talking about the environment and the labor movement's relationship to that.
Sure.
And it ties into a question that we just got. Over 10 years ago, several of the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, their big union halls around the state, converted to completely solar. And the reason they did that is they wanted to have a training facility. They set up training facilities so that IBEW members could get the training they needed to do solar installations, both commercial and domestic. Now, catch up, or the movement didn't catch up. We were hoping that we would see everybody converting to solar, 2 years down the road. That hasn't happened yet, obviously, for a lot of legal interference. But that's the direction labor is going. One of our priority bills that we've stood alongside Florida conservation voters has been fracking here in the state of Florida. I didn't just jump on that issue because I think fracking is disgusting and wish it didn't happen anywhere.
It wasn't just a personal choice.
Right. Our membership authored a resolution and passed it at a convention directing us to stop fracking in Florida. The question I got just a couple minutes ago was, where does the AFL-CIO stand on MCORs, right? The roads to nowhere. I assume that's the same thing, correct?
Yes.
Well, we haven't had the opportunity because after last session, we had a pandemic. So we don't have an official position on that yet because we haven't gone through that uber democratic process that sometimes is really annoying. But we haven't gone through that process of asking our membership. But I can tell you that the 40 and 50 people that were here each week of the legislative session, they watched that play out, and they were vehemently opposed to it. And we did do work behind the scenes to help opponents within the Senate and within the House to put up some barriers to the passage of that legislation. And I would not be surprised if in the very near future, as soon as we have our next opportunity to get all of our membership across the state together, that we'll be able to say that we definitively oppose it. It's a terrible idea. It's not going to create the jobs that anybody says it is. It's going to make a few rich people even richer, and it's going to destroy our environment for no reason. And our members are people first, and they need clean water, and they need green spaces, and they need clean air. And the labor movement, the anti-environmental forces successfully used jobs versus environment for a long time. That's gone away. I think the pinnacle was 2016 presidential election when we saw how the votes went in some of those battleground states. We saw what happened last year. I think those days are over.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness, and good riddance. Maria, do you want to add anything?
Yes, actually, I think that like because of the nature of what Richard and I was talking about, how democratic is the process of the union, right? The closer that climate justice and environmental organizations can work with communities at the base, the strongest that our values are going to be reflected in the way that unions conduct their business. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, again, the union is, they're the one that sets the agenda. Is not a group of leaders in a room. It really comes, bottom up. It really is the members from the committee, from the bargaining floor, from the organizing floor to up. And that's when the decisions are made. Mm-hmm. And that reflects the way that they supported Puerto Rico, right? The nurses union fled to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and gave services in the house. The way that they have supported Haiti, in the midst of a pandemic, and the way that they have supported workers in Burma and Myanmar that were not paid during COVID times because the clothing company decided they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay the clothing that they had ordered because the stores were shut down. I mean, labor really, what the work that the environmental and the climate justice work do with the communities is going to reflect every day more how that way of thinking and education is going to end up dictating what the AFL-CIO is able to do or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, a part of all this, it seems, another important piece, I guess, of democracy, and I know, and I would definitely love to hear you both speak on this, is, the power of protest, right? Like, and I know that in the labor movement, that's absolutely a tool, a mechanism of democracy that has been used to win some really incredible policies that help people's everyday lives. And so, I know this year there's HB1 that's coming down the pike very quickly. And, Rich, I don't know if you want to share kind of your thoughts on HB1, on protest generally. Obviously, it's written in the First Amendment. We have a right to peaceably assemble to address our lawmakers about grievances that we have or issues that we want to raise. So what's your take on HB1?
Well, the labor movement arose out of the tactic of civil disobedience, right? I mean, at the core of our movement is whether it be, against the company or whether it be government, civil disobedience has been a cornerstone of the labor movement, including, of course, peaceful protests. But sometimes you have to take it a little further, and labor has had to do that. What HB1 does is, first off, it criminalizes peaceful protest, mm-hmm. but it also provides insurmountable barriers to any type of civil disobedience. I mean, look, I can't count how many times I have crossed a line that we were told do not cross. And we did that on purpose. We did that so that we would be arrested, so that we would be able to send a message. And once you were arrested, you were politely taken to a bus, you were taken to a processing facility, you were given a ban and bar letter, which is a legal document that says you can't return to this facility for a certain amount of time. That's it. What this legislation does is it makes the criminal penalties for that just insurmountable and completely draconian and unfair. And again, it criminalizes peaceful protest, which is just not necessary. And something that a lot of people don't talk about is the preemption in that legislation that will dictate to local communities how they pay for law enforcement in their communities. It prohibits them from making community decisions about their local policing. And that's not, now they say it's about defund the police, but I think it was Delray Beach cut some overtime from their police department because there were no events or activities for them to look at. So they moved some money out of that overtime fund, put it in something else, and then got slammed for it and were accused of defunding the police. And that's what HB1 will prohibit any local government from doing.
Well, I mean, there's no denying, from Florida conservation voters' perspective and my own perspective, there's no denying that HB1 is an absolutely direct response to the Black Lives Matter movement. And what you just described is the state of Tallahassee basically saying, if the city of St. Petersburg wants to channel some of the policing money into social services or having counselors be first responders to situations, to sort of broadening what police departments provide. I mean, it seems like this bill is 100% a reaction to all of that. And so, Maria, I mean, definitely feel free to chime in here in terms of your take on HB1 and what it's in response to, where it's going to take us.
I think a couple of things. First, I think the bill itself targets disproportionately the way that Black and Brown communities, the access that we're going to be able to have to democracy. Especially taking in consideration that, when you talk about Black and Brown communities, you might even include in this conversation people that don't have the right to vote, right? You're thinking about permanent residents, you're thinking about immigrants, you're thinking about Afro-Latinx immigrants, people that haven't had, people in rural areas that don't have access to necessarily the required documentation to vote, or doesn't have, the culture of vote, right? So I think that a lot of what communities of color have achieved from the women's vote, which is not color, but is a minority, from the women's vote to the civil rights movement to the great boycott, even to recent history, not even talking about Black Lives Matter, but going back to Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico discovered a corrupted governor, and without attacking any guns, there was not guns, there was basically protesting for a month and some change, dancing, chanting, for every night, and the guy was forced to resign and flee of the island. This was not a civil war. This was pure, protesting and attacking. So when you curtail the rights to people peacefully assembling and peacefully, right? I think the attack on the women, and the Black and Brown communities, it is gonna be feel differently. I also think about something as simple as bargaining contract. Bargaining contract can be viewed as a very isolated process where there is workers, for example, in a little nursing home in Melbourne Beach, where no one knows what is going on there, right? So is there trying to fight for staffing levels for their residents. But if they don't go out there and make it public and tell the church, the neighbors, the family members of those residents, why are we not accepting these conditions? Then they have no power. So these specific situations of bargaining contract and go out there and just make a way of the power that community has into make their life of these residents better can be fundamentally curtailed for bills like that. So that is a very alarming matter. You take right now, you go back of the times that we are living, right? You look at the nursing homes that have the highest rates of deaths are those that are not union. Why? Because of exactly what I was saying. The hours of the rate of the staff, per resident, the way that overtime is distributed, the workload, and that's probably one of the minimum, examples that I can give. So these issues matter to the community as a whole. It's not only an issue of those workers that are trying to get $2 more an hour. No, it's a community issue. It's an issue of the United States that people have the right to protest.
Absolutely. I mean, we have so many examples of where protest has made people's lives better. Sorry, Rich, you were going to jump in. I cut you off, and you're muted. Hold on. There you go.
Oh,
there you go.
I just really want to encourage people to read the bill. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious. I mean, it's buffoonery in terms of how they try to define riot. If 3 people gather and then 6 more join them to make it 9, and then something happens, the criminal penalties go way up. I mean, I also just think it's important for folks to understand this is not to address any real policy need. This is purely political. I don't believe that it doesn't mean we don't fight like hell against it, but I don't believe the bill is enforceable. Because it's written like a political commercial that Sean Hannity came up with. It's not, but it's designed to continue what we have seen over the last year, culminating in the January 6th insurrection. It's designed to keep stoking those fires of white supremacy here in the state. It's a political statement much more than it is a policy document. Now the problem is this governor has shown that he has no compulsion whatsoever about passing political statement as real policy. Mm-hmm. And where that gets us, we don't know yet, but it's a scary place. And I just wanted, Maria, something you just said stuck out at me. When you talked about nursing homes and number of deaths, 2 days ago, the Florida a legislation that gives complete blanket immunity to nursing homes for COVID-related deaths and injury passed its committee, right? The very first thing this legislature has done having to do with COVID, is it funding PPE? Is it coming up with a statewide program? Is it developing legislation to facilitate vaccinations? No.
Making sure people don't lose their power in the middle of the pandemic?
It's making sure that big business has complete immunity for putting their workers and customers in harm's way. And then a separate bill, complete immunity for nursing homes and healthcare facilities that did the wrong thing and people died. That should say a lot about where we're at with this legislative session.
It sort of boggles the mind sometimes. I mean, in the middle of a global pandemic where, we've passed the 500,000 death mark in the United States, and it's just kind of sobering to think about the first actions our lawmakers are taking aren't to fix unemployment. It's not to keep roofs. It's not to keep people in their homes. It's not to make sure that they, aren't lose their electricity because they can't pay their bills. It's more corporate giveaways. It's kind of unbelievable.
And eliminating the rights for these frontline heroes to have a union.
Yeah.
That legislation has moved faster than anything in the Senate process. If it hadn't been for some procedural hurdles that we put up yesterday, it would be on the Senate floor. But that legislation, it eliminates. It doesn't completely eliminate, but it makes it much more difficult for teachers, police officers, firefighters, healthcare workers, right? And healthcare workers in the public system. It makes it much more difficult for them to join and remain in their union. For what?
Anti-democratic. I mean, it's like we were saying earlier. So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about, are there any other examples of bills that you think people need to kind of be on the lookout for in session? You know, I had asked earlier about the citizens initiative process. Is there anything going on in that space that folks need to be hearing about?
Well, we haven't heard anything here, like at the Capitol, about a move towards that. I think that the anti-democratic forces feel pretty comfortable with what they did. I actually had a conversation with a group of local unions that wanted to pursue a ballot initiative. And when I told them how expensive and next to impossible it would be in the current climate, you know, they were just completely deflated. So we haven't heard anything along those lines. We know that Ron DeSantis released today a list of legislative priorities designed to take away any gains that we've made in voting. They are definitely coming after voting rights here in the state. They want to eliminate drop-off ballot boxes. They want to eliminate mass mailing of mail-in ballots. They want to eliminate everything that Donald Trump said as part of the big lie is in this list of what the Governor DeSantis wants to do. Now, the only piece that we've seen filed reduces the time. The way it works now is if you apply for a vote by mail ballot, that application, that request is good for 2 election cycles. So around 4 years. They want to shorten it to a calendar year.
Oh my God.
That legislation has been filed. Senator Baxley has it in the Senate. And earlier this week, it passed its first committee before sessions even started.
It's incredible. Every stop of the way, in every possible way, erecting barriers to people engaging. And, you know, it's one of the reasons that I think, you know, when folks think about a conservation group like ours and why do we get involved in democracy issues, it's because when people are cut out of the process, when people are not able to vote, when they're not able to speak up at committee meetings, that's when bad policies happen, right? That's when, you know, we're talking now about anti-protest bills and like clearly anti-democratic bills. Well, there's also anti-environmental bills and anti-public health bills and all of these types of things that just get such incredible momentum. And it's because people have been cut out of the process. So you kind of can't pull apart. If you care about the environment, if you care about labor, if you care about all of these issues that the three of us, are talking about today, you can't sort of turn a blind eye to what's happening on the Democratic front. And by Democratic, I mean democracy front. So Maria, I don't know if I cut you off there. Did you want to chime in?
Well, there's 2 bills that to me are very telling of the state of where the head of the glorious Florida legislature is. One is the bill and the attempts to curtail the Amendment 2 that the people of Florida overwhelmingly, majorly voted to raise the minimum wage in Florida to $15 an hour, which is not even overnight. You know, there's a process attached to it, right? When you think about the kind of industries that are in Florida, you know, service industries, hospitality industries, going back to nursing home, a majority of these workers, you know, for them, the minimum wage is the wage that they're going to get. And to think that someone in their sane mind are saying that they are categories of workers, like returning citizens, like people that is hard to hire. Who are you describing about people that is hard to hire? People whose English is not the first language, people that is over 50 years old, people that is not the right color, doesn't have the right accent, and then, you know, a returning citizen that has their life on hold come back and you immediately put another barrier, into the step of, they already pay, a debt is paid. So when are they going to be paying forever? So that is worries a lot, the communities that I talk to every day, and also is insulting, right? Because hard to hire can mean so many things. Under 21, that's a problem. I by 21 I had 2 daughters already. Why are you talking about? Why should I be? Why anyone will be deemed to win less money than that? So that's a big problem. The other one, on the other hand, is like you have a bill from Representative Escamani that is talking about the goals of turning Florida into 100% energy. But again, it's not going to be overnight. There's a process to this, and she even knows. I'm talking about it. I'm putting on there. I know my bill is not even going to have a chance. No, there is not even going to be discussed. Those are the kind of bills that we want to see, right? At a national level, there are important conversations about Green New Deal. Texas, for God's sake, is suffering the embate of, for one side, climate change. For the other side, they have a mess, of old technology that doesn't work in this world that we live in anymore. The United States just returned to the Paris Agreement. So how can we live in Florida such a dystopian reality that we are not even aligned to where the rest of the world is going? So I think those are 2 bills that and those are 2 that come to my mind right now, because there are so many. They're in the same line of what Rich was mentioning. There is a bill right now being discussed about that. Corporations cannot be sued by the damage that they do to you physically. So if you get sick, it just happened in London. London just gave the first case that they say, this child, she died because of pollution in the city of London. So we are guilty. But if you get sick because of, ashes that were dumped in your water of source, no, you cannot sue that corporation. You can sue them if you're very limited, if your possessions get damaged or something like that. But if you get sick, if you die, if you get frail, you cannot sue them personally. So if you have possessions, you can sue, but if you are simply a person, you cannot. Yeah. So it baffles me. What is the value that the legislature of Florida puts over people? It's always profits over people.
Yeah. That bill, Senate Bill 88, that you're talking about, makes it so much harder if someone's affected by, like you said, burning on an agricultural operation or water pollution. Well, so I know time is precious, and really appreciate you both spending a little bit of time with me on Friday afternoon. We've talked about HB1, which is the anti-protest, anti-democracy bill, like you pointed out, Rich, preempting local communities from making their own decisions really about how they want to police themselves, I guess. And we talked a little bit about some environmental bills here. The fight for our workers, the fight for the environment is really just beginning. So I don't know if you all have any closing remarks, and then I'll wrap up by hopefully Carson, who's magically working things behind the scenes, will share some links with folks in the chat so that they can kind of keep up to speed on what the AFL-CIO is doing, what Chispa is going to be doing over the next few months and years. But anyway, just any closing comments that either of you would like to share?
I don't know. I'll start. Yeah, go ahead. You want me to go ahead? Okay.
No. Please.
I do think that we cannot see each other working in parallel lines without understanding how much workers' rights and environmental rights and justice rights are so intertwined. At the end of the day, it's 1 March. My pathway in the labor movement catapult me into environmental issues, into democracy issues, into climate justice issues, because at the end of the day, our members live in communities that are affected by all of these problems. And jointly, as a team, when we create this kind of alliances, we have responses. We have responses that are deep. We have responses that become solutions. We have responses that are effective because they come from the communities. So I am more than happy to be having, this conversation, and for everyone that is, listening to us. I think my invitation is, to think about environmental justice and climate justice as a whole versus as a piece of what our journey on justice should be.
I don't really think I can follow up with that. That was that was really powerful. I got like little butterflies in my stomach at that. It's one thing. I guess I'll be a little bit more down to earth based on like what they're doing over there right this moment. Mm-hmm. And that is, these guys are operating with impunity right now. The level of arrogance, the level of, this attitude that we can do whatever we want. Mm-hmm. I've never seen it this palpable. And it's because of COVID. It's because people have real problems in their lives more than ever before in this period of crisis. And so they don't believe anybody's paying attention. They've successfully closed down the building, but they don't believe, because of everything that's happening, that people are paying attention back home in their districts. And so I just want to encourage anybody that's hearing this, if you've never really participated or watched before, please do that now, because these guys need to hear from you, because if they don't, there's some really terrible things coming. There really are. Senate Bill 854 that Marie alluded to on the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. If this bill passes, and it does have to be adopted by the voters, it is a proposed constitutional amendment, but if that were to happen, the most conservative estimate about who would be impacted is 2 million people. 2 million people would be put into a separate strata of what they could earn. And they haven't defined hard to hire. That will be up to this legislature to define once they get it in the Constitution. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going over. It's just so important right now for people to pay attention. Yeah. Pay attention and let them know you're paying attention, because that's the only weapon we have. I'll do a shameless plug. We are currently setting up all kinds of different tools and new remote digital things, and that, Aliki, we've known each other a long time. That is not my strong suit. Fortunately, there are people in my orbit that know how to do that, but we're going to try to set up a suite of tools for people to use so that you can participate. Our Lobby Corps program, which is usually 450 to 500 people in town during the duration of session, we've gone virtual with that. We've got 200 people participating. Everything that they would do here, they're going to do at home. Mm-hmm. They're going to participate in committee meetings. They're going to submit testimony online if we can get that worked out. But we're going to have in-district actions, car caravans. It's all going to be in district. But if folks are interested in that and interested in participating in something, you don't have to be a union member at all. FLAFL-CIO.org, or just Google Florida AFL-CIO.
Well, we dropped it in the chat too, so anybody who's watching has got that link. Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm so grateful for you both. I think, as you pointed out, Rich, COVID has definitely amplified really deep problems in our state. I I do appreciate you, though, pointing out as well that you said earlier that, Tallahassee is kind of geographically remote and maybe psychologically remote. And if there's one thing that can kind of come out of us all being in this digital space because of COVID, perhaps even higher engagement, people being able to watch committee meetings, people being able to participate in lobby corps. Maybe in the past it wasn't it wasn't accessible because they couldn't make the trip to Tallahassee, but now being able to do it from home, let's take this moment and use it as an opportunity to strengthen our civic engagement muscles, so to speak.
Absolutely, and we're really looking at it that way, or we're trying to. I mean, I've spent 5 weeks going over to the Capitol and getting kicked in the head. Just terrible things. They've cut people off from speaking, even though there's an hour left of the committee. Yeah. Like, oh, we're running out of time, and so they stopped the committee meeting, and they still had another hour. But yes, Aliki, I think as usual, your optimism and your positive outlook on it could very well be what wins the day. And I'm really honored to be and meet Maria, and I hope we can connect later and figure out how we can support each other's work. Everything you're doing just sounds really amazing and powerful. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you both. And thanks for everybody who's watching. Check out the stream of the chat because we've got lots of great links in there. Signing up for Chispa emails. We've got a link in there if you want to keep up with what Chispa's doing. Same thing with Florida AFL-CIO. So with that, we'll say happy Friday, happy weekend. Be safe and take care of yourselves. Thanks so much.
Thank you.